Hi, everyone. Suj Patel here with another exciting interview to share with you all. Today, we will be speaking with Frank Madden, a seasoned expert in transparency reporting. As you all know, meeting U.S. federal, U.S. state, and international transparency reporting requirements commands a substantial amount of time and resources from you and your organization. Regulations have grown increasingly more complicated and will continue to expand as more jurisdictions introduce new laws and expansions to current rules. So Frank is going to help us by sharing some tips on how to get ahead of it all. Frank, one of the biggest keys to success is knowing your data. What does that mean?
Well, first of all, Sue, just like to thank you for inviting me here today to share my knowledge and my experience as it relates to transparency reporting. And to your point, knowing your data, yes, key to success. The first thing we see from our client base is that we want to see them identify their data sources both internally and externally. You want to consider all data capture systems, whether that is your expense management system, such as a Concur or Chrome River, your account payable systems, which could include SAP, Oracle, your CRM systems, a clinical trial systems, or any of those external third parties that you may have contracted with to manage your events, your speaker programs, or your clinical trials.
So most companies have this type of data spread throughout their organization. Is that correct?
Absolutely, that is spot on. What the client base is going to want to do is determine if these sources contain data for a particular country or region, or is all that data in a single global source. Another important piece here is cross-border consideration. It's imperative to understand where this is, as many times this type of spend can creep up last minute due to these potential silos within your organization. Another big piece here is to know the frequency of this data capture and generation. How often is the data created at each source? For example, data in an expense management system could have data created on a daily basis versus an accounts payable system where we may have data created weekly or whenever those check runs are completed by the company. And then we have our third parties again, where they may process and generate data monthly or quarterly based on the volume that you have.
This is quite a bit of data you're talking about, Frank. Who creates this data? Is it sales reps, medical affairs, research teams, third parties? Where does this come from?
That's another great question, because a key to what you want to do here is identify these individuals or groups that own the data. These are the people that are going to help with the remediation efforts downstream. Keeping an up-to-date register of all the responsible parties that are collecting this data and capturing it will help you save time when trying to track down the details for a particular transaction.
Thanks, Frank. It's clear that understanding your data will give you a full picture of what to expect, when to expect it, and who or where to expect it from.
Absolutely.
So, Frank, what's another critical factor in getting ahead of this?
To be proactive, Suj. What we see is client base would want to collect this data from all their sources on a regular basis. Some consideration there is the volume by source, and then you can make that determination on how often to load and remediate that data. Is it going to be a daily, weekly, monthly cadence? Some cases based on volume could be quarterly. Whatever it may be, you want to continue to be proactive, and I would never recommend to wait any longer than a quarterly basis to collect and remediate this data.
A key word you just mentioned is volume. That could be quite extensive from different sources. How do you handle all this type of data?
Yeah, so that's another one where, you really want to consider the volume. And data collection can be facilitated two avenues, one using automation or flat file delivery. But from the automation standpoint, this is typically done for your sources that have that larger volume of data, or potentially sources that require some type of complex logic to get that data in a mutable state in order to utilize it for transparency reporting. The other great piece of this is hands-free data transfer is going to reduce the potential of human error and really simplify that time and effort you spend on collecting and remediating that data. Once you've collected the data, you can identify the data errors sooner. As perfect as you'd like to see that data and believe it's coming through holistically and complete, we all know data is never going to be that accurate or complete. And garbage in, garbage out, Suj. So we want to continue to keep our data clean and up to date, which will benefit us downstream when reporting time comes around.
That's for sure. You hear that all the time, and it completely makes sense. So if I heard you correctly here, Frank, allow enough time to review the errors and remediate data throughout the year. Don't wait until the end and avoid a backlog of remediation right before the reporting deadline. And all of this will allow you to spend more time with stakeholders to do final reviews, and leadership can feel more comfortable with the data during the attestation process.
Exactly. Being proactive will lead to success throughout the organization when it comes to your transparency reporting.
You mentioned waiting till the last minute. What are some ways to avoid that fire drill right before reporting deadline?
So this really ties into what we were just talking about. You want to regularly review your data. The trending best practice I see across our client base is to institute a monthly compliance close, somewhat similar to a financial close. If monthly is overkill, target a quarterly compliance close. Point being, stay on top of the data month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year. You can also look to generate your jurisdiction reports to evaluate the quality of that data and identify any gaps or errors well ahead of reporting time, really helping us avoid these fire drills in Q1. And another thing I hear across the client base is, well, there's pending legislation and it's not available until it's closer to reporting time. That's okay. I would still suggest to generate these reports based on the most recent published rules, as the value and the meat of the data you're capturing is still going to be relevant and reportable.
Having all of this data aggregated and cleansed on a regular basis seems like it can provide meaningful insight to the organization. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. For many organizations out there, the data cleansed and managed within your transparency operation group is the only single source of an aggregated view of all data related to your HCPs and HCOs. This is a powerful data set to bring immense value to the compliance, finance, and business ops teams across your organization. I mean, think about, you're able to present these insightful analytics back to your leadership, to the teams that interact with these HCPs and HCOs. This is an instant value add to your organization and to your leadership, and it's going to help the company make sound decisions on any future business interactions with these HCPs and HCOs.
Yeah, that seems to make sense. I mean, analytics can be only as good as when there's data. And the more data there is, the more frequently it's loaded, the more analytics can be provided, which can allow for better compliance. And all at the same time, you're bringing value back to the business. It sounds pretty simple, but it requires a lot of work to get there.
Exactly. But again, if we're proactive and regularly review our data, it's a much easier process and it's just part of your normal workflow and not a fire drill.
Well, folks, there you have it. Hopefully these considerations will help your organization have a better experience with the next reporting deadline. Frank, thank you for spending time with us today to share your experiences.
Dude, can't thank you enough for having me and looking forward to the next one.
All right. Well, we will depart with 3 keys to success. Number 1, know your data. Number 2, be proactive. And number 3, regularly review your data. Good luck, everybody.